my desk. But just like they mentioned, my name is Sarah, and I'm the Wildlife Education Specialist at Blandford, which is just a fancy way of saying I do programs, and I also do a lot of the animal caretaking that it takes to have our wildlife ambassadors. And so there are a handful of things that I always make sure I mention prior to getting the birds out, because once the birds are out, I'm lucky if you're listening to me. I sure hope you are, but at this point, I know I have your attention. So some things would be at the very end, if you have questions or stories that you want to tell me as I'm packing my stuff up, you are welcome to approach me, not peeking into the carriers, because the birds, once they're done, and they don't like being peeked in at. But as I'm putting my stuff away, you'd be welcome to come chat it up with me up here. Your little friends are welcome to touch some of these feathers in this set of talons that I have up here, because since there are so many of you, which is a great thing, I won't have an opportunity to pass things between you guys in a timely manner. So at the very end, you're welcome to approach me for questions and stories. Your littles or bigs, it doesn't matter what age, we all like touching stuff. You're welcome to come touch some of these feathers and talons up here. But I also have some more information about Blandford Nature Center for those of you who have been there. For those of you who have not, please come join us. Love that owl shirt I see straight across the room. Things like that will always catch my attention. Anyway, moving on. So at Blandford Nature Center, we do have 264 acres of property to hike. We've got our highlands, which is turning back into more of a native prairie space, kind of oak savanna, actually is what I should call it. We have our meadow. The Brandywine Creek runs through the property, so there's lots of opportunity to go along the stream and find out what kinds of creatures and plants live there. We have multiple areas of forested space, and we have a fully functional farm. So if you're interested in things like CSA, where you pay a local farmer, I know it'd be a little bit of a drive for you as far as local goes, and I bet you got your folks here. But if you're like, hey, I live somewhere close-ish to Grand Rapids, or I don't mind the drive, our farmer does do CSA shares, where you either pay for your vegetable share that you pick up weekly, or you can come in and do a little bit of farm work to pay off your share. But we have all kinds of programs, both on-site and off-site. So on-site being things like date nights. Just this last Saturday, we had pumpkin carving date night. It was really fun. We also have adults-only evening programs that don't have to be date night. It can be you and some pals, or just you if you want. But we have family programming as well. And we also have programming for super, super little guys. And if you just find the word buds for us, it might be barnyard buds, it might be nature buds, but if it's a bud, it's for your little bud to come learn with us for a more age-friendly experience for them. But up here I have some information that if you'd like to take any of these home, I highly encourage you to do so. Right now what I'm doing is Blandford on the Road, where, as you can see, I pack up the animals and we bring them to you, and we teach you about why we have the ambassadors we have and what you can do in Michigan to help them. And so things like schools, churches, daycares, we've had people have family gatherings and they invite us out to educate their family. We've had people who have had work celebrations, like 50th, 100th year celebrations, and they're like, hey, we're gonna have kids here today, can you bring some animals out to teach them? And we're like, yup. So Blandford on the Road is us bringing the animals to you. We also have a pretty private behind the scenes program called Wildlife Care Experience, where, just as the title says, you get an experience of what it's like to care for these wild animals. You help us provide them with food, maybe some enrichment, and depending on which program you register for, whether it's the 2-hour or the 1-hour, you either get a Blandford sticker or a Blandford t-shirt. But these programs are for people of all ages, which is why I opted to have the photo changed to an adult who was enjoying herself, because adults enjoy this too. In fact, this last summer we had a couple who celebrated their 30th wedding anniversary by sharing a care experience together, and I was like, that's pretty adorable. So Wildlife Care Experience is behind the scenes, pretty one-on-one with the wildlife manager or myself. And then the last little plug I have before I move on is, if you are someone who becomes inspired to help the animals at Blandford, but you're also someone who's like, I don't like giving my money because I don't like not knowing where my money goes. I respect you, because I prefer to know where my money goes, but operational funds are very important for any nonprofit organization. But if you want to help the animals specifically, we have a running wish list of things that we go through all year long. Things like rubber gloves, trash bags, bleach, vinegar, sardines, turtle pellets, carrots, frozen corn. No one likes frozen peas. Our opossum used to, but the current one does not. All kinds of other things that if you want to make a donation for us, not a fiscal donation, but a donation of items, we have a wish list up here too. So you guys are welcome to come grab any of this information at the very end if you'd like. But one last little, sorry, I want to make sure you guys can hear me, because I tend to move a lot. So one last little plug I want to make sure I mention is that all of the animals at Blandford are non-releasable ambassadors. So that, sorry friends, Miss Sarah's, I'm used to shouting across places, so this is really spoiling me. So these guys are not our pets. So I do get people, whether it's a truly curious question or maybe a partly snarky question, I do get a lot of people who ask me, what does it take to have an owl as a pet? It takes you to live in a completely different country to have a pet because of the laws and protocols we have here in North America, which is great because that's how we save our animals in the wild, is by preventing people from being like, oh, that thing's so cute, I'm gonna take it home. But then once it's at home with us, it's no longer contributing to its populations. And I heard some folks having conversations about feathers and stuff. There are also laws and regulations like the Migratory Bird Act that prevent us from having items from those animals as well, whether it's a feather, a foot, a wing, a skull. Now, birds who are game birds, like grouse and pheasants and turkeys, you can legally have body parts from them because, again, they're game birds. They're birds that can be hunted. But songbirds, birds of prey, many types of waterfowl, you are not supposed to have them physically alive in your home, but you're also not supposed to bring home feathers and body parts that you find in the wild, simply because for years and years and years, the government has had to try to prevent humans from slaughtering animals for our own benefit. And the reality is, with that little feather, you can't prove that you didn't kill a great horned owl to get the feather. That you could be like, oh, no, I was on a hike and I just found it on the ground. Well, you can't really prove that. So the government has to assume you killed that bird in order to take its body parts for your own benefit, because again, humans have been doing that for a really, really long time. So at Blandford Nature Center, we used to have our rehab program on a full scale. Now we no longer take animals on a more consistent basis for wildlife rehab, but what we will take on are threatened or endangered animals, because we want to make sure with the permits we do still keep at Blandford, our permits and licenses come from the DNR, USDA, Fish and Wildlife Services. They come check us every year, make sure we're doing everything the way we're supposed to, and if we're not, those permits and licenses will get redacted. We won't be able to keep the animals we have. And so every year they come and check on us, and they want to make sure that these animals truly are non-releasable. So they check on them to make sure that we don't have animals just for the sake of them being cool. They make sure that we have written down all the different body parts that we have of the animals. So it's really important to remember that these guys can't come home with me. The things that I have for education can't come home with me. And with those permits, it's one good way of proving to the government we did ethically harvest, which is what we do when the animals die. We did ethically harvest the body parts and the things, or we did ethically obtain these animals from other rehab situations. So if you have an injured animal, we ask that you don't bring it to us, but if you call us, we can be like, hey, in your area, you're gonna be looking for so-and-so for raccoons, so-and-so for hawks, so-and-so for squirrels. So calling us is great. Bringing animals to us, we ask that people don't do that anymore because we just don't run rehab on a full scale. But when we did, that was a big part of jumping into our education programming in using animals, was having animals that once they go through physical therapy, once they go through rehab, a bird, once they take their flight test and inevitably fail it, they can't live in the wild on their own. So all the birds I'm going to show you today have some kind of story, and their story is the reason why they don't live in the wild anymore, and I'll share that with you. But you can bet your bottom dollar that the rest of the animals you'll meet at Blandford, whether it's our mammals, our reptiles, our chunky little toad, my favorite little amphibian girl, all of those animals have a reason as to why they can't live in the wild. And once again, when we come and get inspected, if we have a releasable animal, the government will be like, hey, actually, that owl is good to go. You need to release them so they can produce more native Michigan owls or more native Michigan turtles or whatever they are. But I'm going to go ahead and start pulling some of the birds out. What I'm going to do is I'll try to come up and down, especially because I have a mic and I don't have to worry about what direction my head is facing. I will stay on the edge aisle so you guys can get a good view at them. I do ask that for photos, we just keep our flash off so that we can protect their very light sensitive eyes, at least for the owls. And a reminder always, please don't try to pet the birds. They certainly don't like being touched by me, and they get touched by me almost every single day. So that is why I invite you guys to touch things at the very end so you can get an idea of what they would have felt like. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. And like I said, at the end, if you have any questions that you want to ask me or any stories you want to tell me, I love questions and stories. But today, I am talking to you guys. She's asking why I'm going left-handed, because I want to save my right shoulder. Today, I am introducing you guys to the birds of prey of Blandford. Not just the Blandford owls, which we are very well known for, because the first animal that our founder, Mary Jane Dockeray, the first animal she rescued and put through her own rehab process, that will happen. And at the end, I'm used to always getting paper towel and wiping it up. The first animal she ever rescued was an owl. So Blandford became very well known for owls, but we don't have just owls. So when you're talking about a bird of prey, you are talking about a bird that eats other animals. They prey on other animals. One kind of questionable outlier of that is turkey vultures. That turkey vultures are not active killers. They eat dead things, and they might, if something is like slightly dead, they might stomp on it a little bit to like finish it off, but they have feet much like a chicken, and so they do not have full-on, you good girl? They do not have full-on talons like true birds of prey do. However, vultures have very sharp, very strong beaks. So we have a vulture at Blandford Nature Center that is 45 years old, and we know that because she was found as a nestling when her tree where her nest was, oh girl, you made a mess out of that. Where her nest was got cut down. So she was raised at a zoo from nestling age. So we know she was born in the 70s. I forget which year, 78 maybe. But I would rather get bit by any of our other birds than that turkey vulture, because turkey vultures really do have that pointed hook, the kind of razor sharp edges to just tear into things. And that's because owls and falcons and hawks, they're not carrying away things like deer or bears or large dead animals that have thicker skin than a little squirrel or a little rabbit or a mouse. So turkey vultures are tearing through much thicker skin than another bird of prey would, or a true bird of prey, I should say. So I just wanted to mention that turkey vultures are kind of related in a way, but they're not birds of prey because they don't kill their things. But birds of prey are things like owls, hawks, falcons, eagles, osprey. They are going to be our birds of prey here in Michigan. Now this beautiful girl that you're looking at right here is an American kestrel, and this is a female, and we call her Freya. Now you can tell she's a female because she's got all that brown streaking on her chest. Males have this big red chest, these blue wings, and they just have this blue on their head, and they're like, oh man, check me out, I'm so handsome. And in the bird of prey world, we don't see a lot of sexual dimorphism, which means males and females for birds of prey often look the same. But American kestrels don't like to follow that rule. The males like to be nice and handsome and beautiful, and the females like to have more of that drab camouflage coloration to them, because their job is to sit on that nest and hide their eggs or their young. Whereas the male, his job is to be beautiful, to be loud, and to be fast, because if a predator is approaching their nest, it's the male's job to distract the predator from the nest and to be like, hey, come over here, check me out, you don't want to mess with any of that, look at me. And so if you're familiar with the American kestrel call, which I'll play it on my phone as well as out of my mouth, but they have this kind of, and so the male, he will look a predator dead in the face, knowing that he's pretty fast, and he will flap those wings to draw the predator's attention, and he will to get the predator's attention, and then the predator's like, oh, you are obnoxious, I'm gonna eat you. And so the male's like, yes, please do, come eat me, come this way. And then when the male is far enough from the nest, he bolts it and takes off. So usually the males can get away from the predators during that distraction flight. Am I getting too close to something? So let's see, this is that clee. Wait. There we go, right? You guys hear that? Mm-hmm. Okay, she is. She's like, oh yeah. Now Freya lives with us because she just got done with her more fledging period, And she was flying. She was out on her own, not depending on her parents anymore. And somehow she broke 2 bones in her wrist, or in her wing. One of them being her wrist, and the other being her humerus. So the large bone of where you're kind of, imagine where your biceps are. And what we know with birds is that when they get hit by things, whether they fly into a telephone pole, they fly into a window, they get hit by a car, whatever it is, we know that larger birds tend to have the injury or the impact fixed on a certain area. So a lot of our larger birds that were also hit by cars like Freya, I know, hey girl, she's like, why are we left-handed today? Because I'm saving my right shoulder. A lot of those larger birds of prey that get hit end up hurting their wing or they hurt their head. They don't often hurt both. It's usually that their body is large enough that the impact is fixed in a certain area. But when you're small, like this American kestrel, you get hit pretty much on a more significantly large portion of your body than a bigger bird of prey. So for her, when she got hit on her wing, she managed to break the bones in her wrist as well as, once again, her humerus up in this bicep area. And when she went through rehab and physical therapy, they tried to get those bones back in place. And if you're familiar, birds primarily have hollow bones. They're not completely hollow, and not all birds have those hollowed out bones. But if you are a flighted bird, you will primarily have hollow bones, which means that when they break, they only have that outer core to hope that it fused together properly. You and I, we have a lot of fiber and filament and things in the center of our bones that when we break our bone and the doctor throws a cast on us and says, okay, now don't mess with it, let it do its thing, quit screwing with that bone. It's because our bones have that incredible ability to put the puzzle pieces back together. These guys only have the outer core of that bone to hope that it fuses properly. And more often than not, it does not fuse properly. And so what happens is these guys have limited ability to either retract or extend or retract their wing during flight. And what we know about flight is you have to have 2 symmetrical and 2 functional wings in order to fly. Now our birds at Blandford that can't fly, they can hop and they can glide, especially if they don't want to go on a program. They can hop and glide right over my head to get away from me, but they cannot fly. Flight, true flight is, I can go in the air and I can keep myself flying around in the air. And American kestrels, flight is super important for them because these guys are professional bird hunters. These guys like to go to open fielded spaces, they like to go to bird feeders, and they will hunt little birds. They are diurnal, they're day hunters, unlike owls, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But they will dive through the air, chase that bird down until that bird is wore out, grab the bird in the middle of the air with their talons, and go somewhere else to eat them. So for Freya, not being able to fly would mean she wouldn't be able to get away from predators like red-tailed hawks, raccoons, foxes, coyotes. She won't be able to hunt after small birds. And even if she hunts after ground animals, she can't fly up and away to get into a tree to safely eat that food. And this is a migratory species. What I hope you noticed when I came relatively close to you guys is that she doesn't have as much fluff and down as what you think about owls. She's got nice, bald, scaly feet, little eyes for daytime hunting, and these guys will migrate. They do what's called frog hop migration. They jump past southern North America, pretty much through Central America, all the way down to South America, because in between there are other kestrels and other falcons claiming territory. And along the way, these guys are landing in their territories and getting the boot left and right. So they frog hop migrate pretty far down south to South America in order to hopefully find a good place to stop, get good food, get good shelter, and avoid the bad weather that happens here in Michigan. So she would not be able to fly to migrate either. Now, what I want you to notice before I put her back again is that she's got those black stripes on her cheeks. American kestrels use those kind of like their own personal sunglasses so that as they're hunting through in the daytime, they can keep their eyes wide open and the sun will get absorbed by these stripes. It's a lot like cheetahs. It's a lot like how football players put that black on their face. That way they can keep those eyes wide open and they're not like, oh my gosh, the sun is so bright, I can't catch that chickadee in front of me, because then they would not be very efficient hunters. So with Freya, I'm going to see if she wants to. And she might want to, she might not want to. She likes people watching. I'm gonna see if she wants to just hang out right here on the cart, because a lot of the time she will flutter and make a big old fuss inside her carrier until I let her out. And then I let her out and then she just sits there. So we'll see if she wants to. Oh, maybe she doesn't. I just like to give her that chance because it's very enriching for her. Deco, Deco. She says, are we sure about this? But American kestrels are Michigan's, and North America actually, it's our most common falcon. It's our most colorful falcon, and they are our smallest falcon. So these guys are smaller than peregrines, slower than peregrines, but they are still cousin to the peregrine falcon. And something I want to point out with falcons, because she will be my only falcon today, is that if you ever get a chance to look at the beak of a bird of prey, owls and hawks and falcons all have that curved, sharp beak for tearing into flesh, right? Because they're birds of prey, they're carnivores. But falcons have this really fascinating notch on both sides of their beak called their tomial tooth, or their falcon tooth is the kind of street nickname. And what it does is, as they hold the spine of their prey in their beak, and then they apply that pressure, those notches, they've got an opening, and then they've got a hook. Those notches pierce together and more quickly separate the spine of the prey that they're trying to subdue. So their little tomial tooth helps them subdue their prey a little bit more quickly. So you'll notice it. Now she's too small to see. I should print out a bigger photo so that people can see it up close. But we'll see how she feels. Sometimes she thinks she can find other places to go and she'll bolt off. You bolting? She's trying to stand on the glove. She's like, I'm being a good girl. Look at me, I'm on a glove. How good is that? Okay, well, we'll see how you feel about that. But the next bird I want to show you is an owl, and we'll be kind of hopping between owls and hawks and falcons. And I do want to apologize in advance about the barn owl that you saw in the photo, or in a photo up there. Luna, the barn owl, she is in some pretty geriatric portions of her life. She is in need of specialized indoor care. And so we've been trying to limit her time on the road, and this was just kind of a long drive for her. So I decided to bring this little stinker instead. So this is Archimedes, the long-eared owl, and what you're noticing is called baiting. Baiting is when they think they can get away, so they try and they try and they try, and then eventually they give up. But this behavior is pretty spot on for long-eared owls. Long-eared owls are a very high-strung species because they're at this really uncomfortable place between being predator and prey. They can hunt a lot of animals, so they are predator to quite a few animals, but they can be hunted by a lot of animals as well. So these guys have to be really careful because they have to watch out and see, I can eat you, but you'll eat me, and you'll probably eat me, but I could probably eat you, but that guy over there is probably gonna eat me. And so they're pretty high strung, and you'll notice that in his behavior. But Archie is also just kind of a brat, and that is okay with us. The reason I say that is because, similar to Freya, he was in his fledging phase. Freya had just got done fledging. So if you're not familiar, a hatchling, I just came out of the egg. I might be bald and naked, and I need complete help from my parents. Not all birds are born that way, of course. But then our nestling is they're gonna start getting some of those body feathers in. They're gonna start moving around the nest. They're gonna start exploring a little bit more. And then a fledgling, it's time to learn to fly. So Archimedes was fledging, he was learning how to fly, and once again, we're not sure because we can't ask him in English what happened, or any other human language for that matter. But what we know is he broke both the radius and the ulna in his forearm of his wing. And his bones were so damaged that he had a double compound fracture, meaning both bones were sticking out of his skin. So our vet managed to put the bones back in place. She put pins in place to try. She tried, and that woman tries every day of her wildlife rehab life. She tries to get these bones to fuse properly, and she does have successes. We are very proud of the releases and the successes that the West Michigan Wildlife Center, Nottingham Nature, North Sky Raptor, Wildside Rehab, they all have incredible opportunities to release birds that do have proper bone fusing, but then friends like Archie end up not having that proper bone fusing. So when Archie's bones fuse together, usually you can tell which wing is a bad wing on a bird because they usually kind of hold it open weird, and his is on his right side, as you can see. And so now, not being flighted, similar to Freya, means he wouldn't be a very effective hunter. He wouldn't be able to swoop down, grab prey, swoop up, take it away. He wouldn't be able to get away from predators in the efficient way that he should, which is flight, hopping and running away from a predator. Not very efficient when you're a bird. And so he also would have a difficult time finding proper shelter in the winter because these guys are avid communal roosters. Communal, not rooster as in chicken, rooster as in sharing a space for sleeping and sort of hunkering down for the winter. Communal meaning doing it together. So these guys, in the winter, you can find a large tree hole, and you can find anywhere from 10 to 20, maybe 30 long-eared owls in one tree hole. And they are sharing body heat so that everyone makes it through the night. Because as they're cold at night, or makes it through the day to get to night, and as they're cold during the day and they're shivering, they're using a lot of energy with that shivering. So if they can share body heat during the day while they're roosting, at night, when it's time to take off and hunt, everyone saved their energy pretty well throughout the night by roosting together. So these guys really depend on getting up into those trees in the winter to avoid freezing, to avoid hungry predators, because everybody's hungry in the winter. And owls are fair game to any flighted or ground predator that has a grumbling belly. And what you're noticing with Archie's behavior is he's just trying to settle himself down. Similar to how cats and dogs, they pant when they're hot. When you're frustrated or you're overwhelmed, you might not recognize it, but your body temperature goes up. That's your body's reaction to that type of change, that type of brain activity. And so when he's panting, he's just trying to cool himself down. He's just trying to settle himself down. The things that would tell me that he is done and has had enough of my shenanigans is this owl is not afraid to vocalize on glove. And I will show you an example in just a minute because I do not want to do it while he's on glove. I've made that mistake. But so far, he's showing us that he's feeling okay. And one thing I want to remind you about long-eared owls is that those feathers on top of their head are not where their ears are. Owl ears are located on the edge of their facial disc. You'll notice that owls versus hawks or falcons have typically an oval, heart, or circular shaped face. That acts as a sound collecting disc that allows the feathers on the face to vibrate the sound vibrations to their ears. And so usually owls will also have asymmetrical ear holes. You and I, symmetry is our ear holes are straight across from each other. But owls, most owl species, have an ear hole that's down lower and one that's up higher, so that their brain can work with their sense of hearing to figure out what's going on around them. Because owls who are nocturnal have very, very large eyes to try to see in the dark. And we'll talk about that in just a second when I get Bart out. But what I want to tell you about long-eared owls is that here in Michigan, these guys are threatened. If you're not familiar with the stages of conservation, extirpation means that animal is not in a specific area anymore. And for Michigan, a lot of animals are facing being close to extirpation. Extinction is they're not on this planet. Dodo birds, they're gone. Nobody's going to find one. They're done. But as a threatened species, that means they are 2 steps from extirpation in Michigan. 2 steps of conservation change from not being found in Michigan anymore. Endangered is, hey, this is the last ditch effort for us to try to save that species or they're gone. Threatened is, hey, something's happening. I think we need to do something about it or we're gonna get to that endangered step and things are gonna move quickly and we're gonna lose that species. So the reason why long-eared owls are threatened is because of habitat change. Go figure, right? That happens to a lot of animals. But theirs is a very strange story with a little bit of human rationalization, but also that kind of ethical balance of human development versus the needs of wildlife. So long-eared owls are very picky about their habitat. They need contiguous or connected habitat. They need that forested space for them, primarily coniferous, they really like evergreens. They need that forested space for roosting and nesting to be connected to an open fielded space for hunting. And what happens is the interruption of that habitat, people will be like, oh, no, don't worry, it's all good, it's all good. I didn't cut a single tree down. I left that forest up. Aren't you glad? I just developed on the field. And we're like, true, you saved trees and we love that, but also that field was very important to lots of predators, the prey that they're hunting for there, that field also has its purpose. So the soapbox I stand on is, let's develop on already developed spaces and abandoned lots and abandoned buildings and things like that. But it's fine, I'm not a developer and I don't do that stuff. But these guys having that habitat change forces them to travel farther distances to either get somewhere to safely nest or roost or somewhere to safely hunt. So they're using more energy than they should. They're getting exposed to diseases and predators that they may not have been in their original territory, or they're ending up in someone else's territory. And I will tell you, birds of prey will duke it out if you are in their territory, especially those great horned owls. Great horned owls have zero time for shenanigans. And so these guys end up in someone else's territory and either lose their life or get injured and then eventually get an infection and lose their life, or they're just forced to keep looking, and maybe they never find the right place to settle, and they end up being emaciated or starving to death, and then they pass away, or a predator says, hey, you're pretty weak, I think I could take you down easy. So these guys have trouble with that habitat interruption because it forces them into a lot of dangerous situations that make it difficult for them to keep themselves alive, which means they're not contributing to their populations. But I'm gonna go ahead and put this beautiful boy, this beautiful boy back because he was so patient. He was, I know. Yeah, good man. So I was gonna show you briefly that with owls, not all owls say who. That is something that I sort of resent about Hollywood science. Not all owls say who. The closest to any type of classic who is gonna be the long-eared owl. The long-eared owl has this and that's about it. So that's a pretty classic who, I would say. When they get very frustrated or they're trying to alert the rest of their crew, whether it's something's approaching our nest, something is trying to steal my food, Miss Sarah's taking me in the back because it's time to get my nails trimmed and I'm not happy about it. They make this cat-like call. It's kind of, it starts with a beak clack, usually they clack, 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 and they do this. And one day, I was talking about it while Archie was on glove because I am so used to doing all of my terrible owl calls with birds on glove and them just ignoring me because they're like, you didn't hit the note right at all. I'm not even bothered by this. But Archie, apparently I hit the note right because he looked me dead in my eyes and was like, and I was like, oh my God, we're good, dude. I'm pretty sure I just told you danger was around and that's not true. I'm so sorry. Oh, and so I had to put him away. And now I've learned my lesson. So that is definitely an alert call of a long-eared owl. Here in Michigan, we also have the short-eared owl, which, as their name says, the tufts on top of their feathers, or on top of their head, which that is what those are, is feather tufts. They are a little bit shorter than the long-eared owl, and they don't look exactly the same. But great horns, screeches, and barred owls are going to be the most common owls here in Michigan, and you can find them in your own backyard even if you live in the city because they have become very adapted to urbanized, close to human living, not meaning they want to interact with us or be pals with us, just meaning they love that all kinds of scavengers and rodents follow where we go, which is awesome for them, not for us. And so the great horned owl is one that I bet a lot of you have heard if you hear any classic hooting, or here we go again, Hollywood science. If you have seen the most recent Beauty and the Beast, and the Agatha, the witch, has a barn owl in her little hut, and I was like, oh my God, that's so cute. And then the barn owl goes, and I was like, no, that's not accurate. So right now we've got great horn, that very deep, push it through your cheeks. Very deep. And if you hear a pair duetting, you can tell the male from the female because the male will have that, or the female. You can hear that pitch difference. Now here, this is what Agatha's barn owl should have sounded like. Also, this is the bird that should have been called the screech owl. The screech owl should have been called the tree pony. It's fine. They had a hard job to do as scientists, finding all these new animals and giving them names. But the barn owl should have been the screech owl because in no way do my ears hear who at all. It's this kind of... barn, and you'll hear me emphasize barn with an N because you're going to meet a barred owl here in just a minute with a D. But barn owls are a source of early Michigan ghost stories because pioneer men would have been going into their barn at night to check on their animals, and this white swooping figure would swoop over their head, and the farmer would be like, "My barn is haunted!" But it was just an owl taking care of the rodents for him, which is great. And then the last call I want to play for you for owls is the barred owl. And the barred owl has that who cooks for you all. That well, actually, I'll play the screech owl for you too because I can't help myself. And I personally, for birding, as far as bird calls go, I like to move my hand to the tone because that reminds me, is this a longer note? Is this a shorter note? Is it a diving note? Because with the mourning dove, a lot of people think they're hearing owls in the morning. That's a mourning dove, just getting her little coo on. But it says woo, 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 woo. So I like to move my hand with it. Feel free to do what helps you best in terms of remembering. But this is that classic who of the Who Cooks for You for barred owls with a D. But when they get excited because their eggs hatched, or they found their mate, or they found good food, or their mate approved their nesting site, whatever it is, they get crazy with each other, and it's this and I love it because Audubon calls it pair hooting it up, and I think that's so cute. But its technical term is caterwauling. And they do this. And they just go nuts with it. And we'll talk about that with Bart in just a second. Now the last call I want to play for you is screech owls. So you can see why, had I been one of the early scientists, they would be the tree ponies. And that's okay, they had a hard job. But their voice has this kind of descending call to it. It says, woo, woo. Is it correct? Screech owl. Because it sounds screechy, you're right. The early scientists were like, whoa, that's super screechy and noisy. What the heck is that? But the next bird I want to show you is going to be another one of our owls. And he's a pretty patient boy. Because I figure we'll let Freya, she seems to be enjoying her people watching. So I should add a note, right? That as I'm like, remember, these aren't my pets, nah, 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 and I'm going on and on about how I know their personalities so well. When you work closely with something, you get to know it well, whether it's children, because you're a teacher, children because you're a parent, children because you're an educator, animals because you're a caretaker, animals because you're an educator, whatever it is. Freya, this is her in her glory. When she was in her rehab setting, she exemplified some significant Napoleon syndrome behavior. And she was in a room with bald eagles, golden eagles, great horned owls, peregrine falcons, Cooper's hawks, red-tailed hawks. I think at that time that's who was in the room with her. And they can all see each other through the wiring, but obviously no combat, no killing and eating, none of that business, because otherwise what's the point of rehabbing them? She decided every time she came out of that carrier, because they were trying to glove train her, knowing that she wasn't releasable and they wanted to get her used to people so that glove training would be easy and not stressful, thank goodness for our vet. She would go, as she'd get carried, she'd look at every single one of those birds and she's telling these bald eagles, I'm the boss applesauce. Great horns, I'm the boss applesauce. Peregrines, I'm the boss applesauce. And she really, in her mind, she really does think she's the boss applesauce. She's the supervisor. So once again, this is Freya, authentic Freya. And I feel like I kind of identify with that, you know, when you're like dynamite, you're little but mighty. What she got? So remember I mentioned barn was that photo, and he is going to make a poop. I'll try, maybe I can keep it close to where Freya's was. Here, let's poop right in the same spot. That the barn owl, it has that big white chest, kind of golden coloration to them, heart-shaped face. This is a barred owl with a D. And there it is. And barred owls get their name from having stripes from head to toe. A lot of birds have stripes because stripes are one of nature's best camouflage patterns. But barred owls have it on their entire body. And they're benefiting in the wild because as branches are crossing over one another, they look striped. As sun is shining through those crossed branches, it's forming stripes. As snow is piling up on top of those branches, it's forming that white, brown, white, brown, white, brown alternating coloration. And so they have really fantastic camouflage because of those stripes. Now, the barred owl lives with us. If you remember earlier, I said a lot of large birds of prey that when they get hit by cars or fly into a telephone pole or fly into a window, whatever it is, a lot of the time it's the head or the wings. It's usually not both. And that's the case for Bart. He did not hurt his wings. So technically, this boy is fully flighted, and you'll notice that all of our birds are attached to a leash, whether they're flighted or not, just to keep them safe and to keep them close to me. But for him, he hit his head pretty hard when he got hit by a car. And so when he was hit on his right side. And what happened was the retina in his right eye, which as you know is a layer of cells, essentially a layer of tissue that helps produce images to communicate with your brain. Well, his retina detached itself. So now that layer of tissue is just floating around in his eyeball like a little piece of tissue paper in his eye. So he is blind in his right eye. And owls are a binocular predator, which means they have eyes in front, born to hunt. And those big eyes need to work together. Bi meaning both. You gotta have both functional eyes to be an effective hunter, to watch out for predators, to locate good quality shelter and things like that. But also, Bart bonked his brain. So you're hopefully noticing he is being a much more patient boy on the glove than the other two, and that is largely due to his brain damage, that he simply does not pay the best attention to things. And so for us, that makes programming really great because you are all being incredibly respectful of me and the birds. That is not always the case, and that is okay because sometimes little kids, we just are learning to control our excitement properly, right? And so I can take him to a preschool class where the kids refuse to sit down and they refuse to turn voices to zero, and they're reaching up and trying to pet him, and I'm lifting him up in the air, and he will just sit there like, interesting. And so it makes it easy to use him for programs, but as I mentioned earlier, it would make it easy for predators to sneak up on him as he's not detecting those predators. It would make it easy for him to lose track of prey that he should be hunting and subduing and eating. And for healthy birds of prey, sometimes it can take up to 10 attempts after one prey item to finally subdue that animal. So imagine, as a one-eyed, brain-damaged predator, if it already would have taken you 10 attempts, it'll take him another 30 or more to actually catch one animal. And the reality is, that animal's gonna escape him and he's gonna completely forget. Because he gets a lot of kind of blank slate moments where you'll see him noticing something. Sometimes it's the dead mice in their cage because we don't give our animals live feed unless we know they're releasable, because it's just not ethical to give a slightly imbalanced animal a challenge that they can't really face. That's pretty unethical, and they can end up hurting themselves. But also, we don't like rodents running away and living in our building because they escaped the owl cages. So they get dead prey. And you'll see Bart sometimes suddenly this like instinct kicks in and he sees those mice and he's like, and he does just like cats and dogs, he'll do this kind of butt shake, like he's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna pounce on that thing, and then boom, he'll jump, he'll pounce with his talons. You will see him squeeze those dead mice because their bodies just turn into this puffball, but they're already dead. So the challenge wasn't that difficult for him. And then sometimes you'll see him doing the butt shake, looking at the mice, and then suddenly he's like, and that's it. He has no idea what he previously was doing, but he's not doing it again. And so for that brain damage, being blind in an eye, he would not be a very efficient predator. He could not recognize or detect predators that want to take him down. So if you're curious about large birds of prey, other large birds of prey will prey on them. So great horned owls, red-tailed hawks, things like raccoons, coyotes, foxes. If he was grounded from not flying, or he was grounded from confusion and not sure how to get back up into the trees, ground predators can also tear owls apart and will eat them. So for Bart, it's just good for him to not live in the wild because he wouldn't do so hot out there. He probably wouldn't survive very long. But what I love about Bart is that he has a best friendship story at Blandford Nature Center, that he was with us a year prior to getting our owl, Baby. And Baby gets her name because she came to us as a baby, but at this point, she's 12 years old, so she's a brat. She's probably Blandford's biggest brat. I think you're second in line, Freya. And so Bart and Baby are BFFs. They are not mates. They have decided whether it's that Baby recognizes he's not the best quality, or Bart just hasn't done the courting and Baby doesn't know what courting is, whatever it is, they are not mates. They are just pals. But in the wild, barred owls will move in groups, and a lot of the time the parents will let their young live with them for up to about 2 years, and then they get the boot and the parents are like, okay, you gotta go claim a territory and figure life out. I've helped you enough. It's time to move along. But if you see barred owls 1, 2, 4 in a group, it is not uncommon. They are a very social species between each other. Once again, not between us and them, but between each other. And so we see that in captivity with Bart and Baby. We see them grooming each other. We see them doing something that ornithologists call beakies, which is like Eskimo kisses. They rub their beak against each other and they kind of do this like tip of the beak kisses with each other. And so they are very affectionate towards one another. I would say the love is a little more heavy on Bart's end than Baby's end. Baby, I was just listening to Tom Petty, You Got Lucky, and I was like, that's Baby's song. People go a whole lifetime never knowing what kind of love she gets from him, and she has no idea. I was just listening to it, and I was like, Bart, this is Baby's freaking song, man. She got lucky that she found you. Like, oh my gosh, she doesn't even, anyway. So I try to remind her, but her not speaking English, it's not very helpful. And so Bart will try to groom Baby, and sometimes she's into it. Sometimes you'll see her literally lean into it like, all right, this is kind of nice. But sometimes she's so not into it, she just takes her leg and slowly shoves him away from her. But that is also an indication that Bart recognizes she is the alpha. Because in the barred owl world, there is a little bit of hierarchy. And the alpha, the more dominant one, is going to sit up higher in the tree, closer to the trunk. Because I'm less accessible to predators than you, which you're going to be lower in the tree and farther out on the branches where predators can get you a little bit easier. And these guys will show affection to the dominant one to pretty much affirm, yes, you are dominant to me. Yes, I recognize this. No, I don't want any trouble. And you see Bart do that a lot with Baby. But it's also that confusing, like, is he doing it to submit to her or is he doing it to court her? Because then he'll throw in things that are a little bit more on the lovey end, like when these guys are courting a mate, they will offer them a gift, and it'll be an animal of some kind, a head of some kind of animal. And Bart will go to the bottom of the cage, pick up a mouse, walk all the way up to Baby, and he'll offer it to her. Sometimes she takes it and will begin eating it. Sometimes she takes it and then just goes and drops it on, and you hear boom, you hear it hit the bottom, and it's like, girl, he worked so hard to carry that whole mouse up to you, and again, you don't understand the love that you've got from this guy. But that is okay, because even if they were mates, it's not that they would be able to rear their own young, because they are poor quality examples of parents, and with certain captive scenarios like or situations like what we have at Blandford, it's not ethical for us to rear young. So we don't allow our birds to actually produce viable eggs. And if they do, they get removed before they can develop. But now that Bart is done, I have one more bird I want to show you. And it will be time for me to say goodbye and see if you guys have any other questions or stories. Hi, I do have to put you back because you are not going to like Buddy. Hi. 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 She has never seen the next bird I'm going to take out, and I feel that she will immediately recognize him as a predator, and I don't want to put her through that. I don't want her to be like, ugh. You're a good girl, though. You gotta close those wings, honey. She's a good girl. She's a good girl. She's a good girl. Okay. All right, so let me talk about him for a minute, and then I'll take him out. So the last bird I want to show you is our red-tailed hawk Buddy. And he's wonderful, he's beautiful, he is handsome, he is big, he is tough. And he is probably, of all the animals at Blandford, the bird who has drawn the most blood from me because he don't mess around. So Buddy can sometimes protest where I will be holding him, and instead of standing on the glove, he might have his knees completely bent. He might be sitting on the glove. He might hang backwards from the glove. He might do anything he can to make it impossible for me to hold him, but I'm going to continue to hold him. And the reason why Buddy puts up more of a fight is because he's one of our birds that lives on our wildlife trail, so he's not used for programs as often as the rest of the birds. But it's important that on days like this, when I'm talking about birds of prey, that it's like, all right, man, we all got to do our part. You got to hit the road with me, Buddy. But I can talk about him while I have him on glove. I'll just warn you that I may be slightly distracted while trying to upright him on glove. Oh, you know what? I'm actually going to attach you to my pants. There we go. That will make my life easier. I know. And we are unable to do flight programming with our birds just because our birds are primarily not flighted. But if you're curious about what a flight test is for birds, I know. She says, if I open my wings, then I can't fit through the door, and then you just can't take me out. There we go. Make me look like a liar. So flight tests for birds, if you're curious, is you go to a flight corridor, which is a large open space a lot like this, and you have perches on different levels. You take the bird and you throw them in the air, because once they're in the air, their instinct should be to stay flighted. So that's what a flight test is with a lot of birds. Oh, there is something tickling my neck. Bro, did you have a bug on you that you brought with us? Because that would be weird. So Buddy gets his name Buddy because we had another red-tailed hawk named Ruby when he came on. Now red-tailed hawks get their name, I'll turn him around briefly, because of the red color on his tail feathers. And I will give you guys a heads up, I won't be able to go up and down the aisles with him if he shows me that he won't stay comfortable. I'll probably just stay up close, but I'll test him. But they get that name from those red tail feathers that you see right now, but they don't actually get those red tail feathers until they're 2 years old. So when Buddy came to us, he had striped tail feathers. So that told us when he was hit by a car in Coopersville, he actually wasn't even 2 yet. So he was still a first, if not first and a half-ish, moving on to second year. And so we had another red-tailed hawk named Ruby, and Ruby made him her buddy. She took him under her wing, and she taught him all kinds of good things, like how to tear their food apart, how to properly bathe, how to properly preen, but she also taught him naughty things. She taught him that when people come in our cage, we fly over their head like crazy to spook them, and then sometimes they leave. She taught him that when snakes come in our cage, we kill them and we put them on the bench to leave them there for display. And we were like, wow, that's really interesting because they don't ever eat the snake. And if they were, it'd probably be the snake's head because brain has highest calorie content for whatever prey animal they're hunting. So birds of prey a lot of the time, especially if you've ever found a headless animal in your yard and you were like, what the heck, man? it was probably a bird of prey taking a quick meal, dropping the body, and going. So usually they'll end up eating the head. But these guys didn't eat the heads of those snakes, and we were like, that's really curious. And then after Ruby passed away from old age, her kidneys went into failure, we saw that he continued those behaviors. He flew over our head to spook us and to see if he could get us to leave the cage. No, we don't, because we have things to do, but we might be like, whoa, oh my gosh, you're so spooky. But the first spring, after Ruby was no longer his roommate, he killed a snake and put it on the bench. And he was like, that's what my girl taught me. She taught me that spitefully we show everyone around here, I'm the toughest guy here and you don't want to mess with me. And so when things like squirrels get into his cage, he will also kill them. And so Buddy is a beautiful, beautiful, handsome example of a red-tailed hawk. Red-tailed hawks are actually Michigan and North America's most common hawk. And so these are the guys that if they're a larger raptor like him, so okay.
All public computers will be shutting down in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Bootios in the bird or the hawk world, they have much larger wingspans, broader body shapes, unlike our very skinny accipiters. And so for him, or for red-tailed hawks, if you're looking at them, you're seeing this like decent sized, kind of erect chest, watching on the highway signs, watching on telephone poles and telephone lines. And so these are guys that usually when you see a bird of prey along the highway, it's probably a red-tailed hawk. But they're really cool because they have awesome, awesome, awesome hunting abilities. They have razor sharp talons that they can pierce their prey with, a super duper duper sharp beak that they can tear into the flesh of their prey, very precise vision. Owls, you see him. Owls have large eyes for seeing in the dark, and owl eyes cannot move. That's why owls turn their heads as far as they can. I want everyone in this room to say almost. Owls can turn their head almost all the way around. No animal on this planet can turn their head all the way around or they're going to snap their spine and die. But with hawks, they're not going to have as large of eyes as owls because they are diurnal. They are able to see when the sun is out. And another thing that I like to compare is the production of sound with flight. Owls, when they fly, their wings do not produce sound because at night it's best if I sneak up on my prey. And because my prey at night have what we call up and cupped ears. Their ears are pointed up and they are cupped, so they are listening for predators. And so owls have very soft surfaces to their feathers. They have openings on the edge that allow their wings to comb the air instead of snapping it. Hawks and falcons don't have those openings. They don't have the same flexible, soft surface. They have tight, stiff feathers for fast flight. And when those feathers in their wings hit the air, they snap and make sound. So for them, they don't need the large eyes. They don't need the large ears like owls do because they are fast. They are probably going to get their prey before their prey can even get a chance to run away from them. And so they don't need to be silent. They don't need to use nocturnal adaptations like owls do because these diurnal hunters can depend on the sunlight and they're really particular about the areas that they hunt in. They're pretty good about having kind of a routine route that they take, knowing, hey, that brush pile there, I see squirrels come and go. Those bird feeders over there, I see birds come and go. And so they're pretty good at scoping out hunting spaces and kind of making their rounds in areas that they know are going to be successful for hunting. But we know that these guys can also, as Buddy did, get hit by cars and get grounded. We've had hawks, red-tailed hawks that came to us for rehab when we used to do rehab. Prior to 2015, I believe, is when we stopped. And you would get pellets from them because owls aren't the only ones that produce pellets. Other birds of prey do too, but other birds of prey have a higher capacity to digest bone and other things than owls do. So hawk pellets and falcon pellets tend to be primarily fur, feather, exoskeleton, or scale. There's not going to be a lot of bones in it because they can digest bones better than owls. But we've had red-tailed hawks who came into rehab, were grounded for a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, and once they start regurgitating the pellet from what they ate previously, there will be things like cicada exoskeletons, grasshopper exoskeletons. These guys will hunt whatever they can in whatever condition they're in. Now, mind you, yes, they were successful in getting those cicadas and grasshoppers, But how many of those are they going to need to eat to keep up with their metabolism and keep up with their calorie need on a daily basis to actually survive? So thankfully, when they're grounded before they get to a rehab situation, they can still get food for themselves, but it's better for them to get those larger body prey that will add to their metabolic needs, their caloric needs. And for Buddy, he loves things like hamsters, rats. Again, he'll kill and eat the squirrels that get in and out of his cage, because in the winter, squirrels will steal the rats from our cages outside, because squirrels are what's called opportunistic omnivores, meaning they're primarily herbivores, but when the winter's hard and you need protein and you need calories, they will eat meat. And so they will steal the rats from our birds. And Buddy, we're always like, yeah, man, get that stinking squirrel, because that squirrel is stealing the rats that we pay for. And sometimes our birds don't even get to the rats before the squirrels do, because the squirrels, they've got it down to a time of like, okay, I hear those keys jingling, that means the humans are coming. I hear the keys jingling again, the humans are gone, I'm gonna go steal a rat. And so we're always rooting Buddy on to end up killing one of the squirrels, because the squirrel shouldn't be in there anyway. Oh my goodness gracious. I'm gonna put Buddy back real quick, if he will let me. And then I will give you guys a chance to ask me some questions. I wanna tell you all, since I have a mic on and I don't have to worry about what direction I'm facing right now, I wanna tell you all, thank you for being so respectful. Thank you for being so patient. Thank you for holding on to your questions and stories until the very end. I really appreciate that. The only reason that is because, cool, he made that way easier than he did last time. The reason that is because I get people who will ask me really good questions or tell me really good stories, and then I'm stuck on that, and I forget whatever the heck it was that I'm talking about or was talking about, because I'm like, let's talk about that thing you just said, I like that. So I want to tell you all, thank you for coming to learn with us and for being excited about birds and meeting some live birds. If you get a chance to visit us at Blandford Nature Center, keep an eye out for our community programs. Come out for a hike. We have Nature Makers Market coming out, where local artists will be bringing their things for purchase. And we also have festivals throughout the year. So thank you all so much for coming to learn with us today. Thank you. At Blandford, we don't have any peregrine falcons. That is kind of a dream bird of mine, but you know, I'll take what I can get in terms of permanent placement for non-releasable animals. That was a good question.
We have time for a few questions.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions for me or for our Audubon friends, hey.
I heard that you guys had an owl a while ago, and there was a mate out in nature, and she would bring him food.
Yeah, girl. Yeah. So, sometimes I get stuff out because I get really excited to talk about it, and then I talk about other things, and I forget to talk about those things, and then I'm like, oh wait, you brought that up, let's talk about it. So, Catherine the Great Horned Owl, who does not come on programs, because if someone has a glove-handleable owl, I would be willing to argue they are either brain damaged or they're an imprint, and Catherine is neither, so she doesn't come on the glove. But she came from the Blandford property, and her mate, after being brought into captivity with us, after being labeled as non-releasable from her rehab situation, the mate would come to her cage, and he would sing above her cage, and he would bring her gifts. And those gifts were not chocolates or diamonds or flowers. Those gifts were squirrel heads, rabbit heads, skunk heads, and on her last winter of living on the wildlife trail before we moved her indoors, similar to Lucy, our turkey vulture, that the geriatric care is just better for her inside in a climate-controlled space, and she gets all her meds from us. That last winter that she was out there, I saw whiskers hanging out of the snow, and I was like, I know that that's a gift. And I pulled it up, and it was just a rabbit head. So yeah, Catherine is our love story. And that first fall, or I should say winter, following her moving indoors, we didn't hear any calling. We didn't hear any singing. It was quiet. And then the next winter, we heard, which meant if that was her mate out there, probably not likely because Catherine is in her 30s, but if it was, he found a new mate. If it wasn't, then a new pair of great horns came and claimed our territory. But yeah, she is absolutely our love story, and he certainly did bring her gifts. Good question. Do you guys have any other questions for me? Or stories about things? Hey.
What's a pellet? Like,
Pellet. So pellet is the word for when you compress things. So turtle pellets is compressed food for the turtle. Rabbit pellets is compressed plants for the rabbit. So pellets of birds of prey is compressed material that their body has decided, you know what, it's not worth the energy to digest that because digesting you isn't going to give me energy. So fur, bones, scales, feathers, exoskeleton of insects, those kinds of things aren't really providing nutrition for the bird of prey. So the body is like, hey, we're not sending that all the way through the digestive system to waste energy to turn it into poop to get no energy out of it. So pellets stop in the gizzard because birds of prey lack a crop, and a crop is another organ that birds use to grind, and then the gizzard kind of burns it up and tears it down with acid, and then it goes to the stomach. But since they lack a crop, the gizzard is where those things stop and form that compressed pellet. Good question, buddy. Yeah. Do you guys have any other questions?
I just want to say you were an effective speaker. It was great. Wonderful, wonderful job.
Thank you. I love doing this. I love doing this. Thank you for having us out today.
And if you want to learn more about owls, right? We're having a program on November 21st. Where Mike Overway is going to be talking about photographing all of America's owls.
Oh, love that. So this is great horned owl and that's red-tailed hawk. So if you